And then this week, I see that NXT made headlines when NXT General Manager Ava announced who Roxanne Perez would be defending her NXT Women's Championship against next Sunday at their Battleground show from the UFC Apex in Las Vegas. It will be the TNA Knockouts champion, Jordynne Grace, who walked out to confront Roxanne at the PC on Tuesday night in the middle of the ring. Now, we saw Jordynne Grace in this year's Royal Rumble, and she looked great. I thought she outshined most of the WWE talent in the match, to be honest with you. It appears the working relationship between WWE and TNA is going to continue, and I think that's awesome. I love it. Okay, whatever you think of TNA, and even from the beginning of the year, in terms of like buzz and attention, I mean, boy, have they fallen off in terms of all that love and attention they were getting ever since Scott D'Amore got shit-canned. But whatever you think about the company, I mean, look, they've got a talented roster. Jordynne Grace being one of the champions on that roster right now. I think it's awesome. I think we need more of this in wrestling. AEW should not be the only major company willing to work with other promotions. We found out this week, for example, Mercedes Moné, the TBS champion, is going to be wrestling Stephanie Vicaire, the CMLL Women's World Champion, at Forbidden Door. Well, before we get to Forbidden Door, we've got the NXT Women's Champion defending against the TNA Knockouts champion. Like, how cool is that? So, how did this all come to pass? Per PW Insider, the deal came together about 3 weeks ago and was kept so confidential that 99% of the staff in TNA had no idea that it was happening, including the creative team. This week's TNA TV, it had to be adjusted late in the editing process to include a recap of her appearance on NXT. During the NXT rehearsals, the run sheet for the segment listed Alexa Bliss as the one coming out, and they played Lita's entrance music during the rehearsal to throw everybody off. So they were working hard to make sure that this shit didn't leak, which I can appreciate because it's rare these days that stuff doesn't leak. So when they can pull it off, it's kind of a hat tip moment. It's not easy to keep this stuff under wraps. There are some in WWE that have claimed Roxanne legitimately did not know who would be walking out until she actually appeared live on TV. Did Jordynne Grace? I don't know if I believe that, but that's what's being claimed. According to Mike Johnson, the belief in WWE is that there will be some sort of NXT involvement at the TNA Against All Odds show on June 14th, which will see Grace having an open challenge for her TNA Knockouts title. And there may also be some NXT involvement at Slammiversary in Montreal this year. The hope within TNA is that the NXT connection can help lift ticket sales for their upcoming events, even if they can't actually announce any NXT talent in advance, which they may not be able to, or they may want it to be a surprise. He also says that Grace is under TNA contract through the first quarter of 2025, at which point, if she wanted to leave, she would be free and clear to. I find it hard to believe she won't end up in WWE next year. I would be shocked if she didn't sign there. That would be shocking to me. WWE is clearly high on her. Shawn Michaels did an interview this week where he said he's been very public about being a fan of her work, and he expressed to Triple H privately how jealous he was that the main roster got to use her in the Royal Rumble this year. Wrestling is more fun when we get these types of collaborations. I take it for granted at this point with AEW, but anytime I see WWE doing this, even NXT, it's wild to me because for so many years they've been so walled off from everybody else in their own little world and walled off from allowing other people to play in their sandbox or allowing their talent to play in somebody else's sandbox. You can find examples of it here and there, like isolated examples, but it was very rare. So I think it's great. It was not a great week for TNA behind the scenes. Per PW Insider, there were a number of departures this week as part of cutbacks made by Anthem management. David Sahadi, who is their creative director, and you may know the name. He used to work for WWE for many years. He was a wizard when it came to their video packages. I remember him telling the story about the Legend spot that he produced. This was back at like the beginning of the Attitude Era. It had Fred Blassie and Gorilla Monsoon and Ernie Ladd and just some of these legends, basically like in an empty warehouse they filmed it. talking about how, and they had voiceovers from each one talking about how, oh, he could still hear the cheers of the crowd. And then you see the fans in the background. Like they had people in the building as they're in the ring waving. It's as if they're imagining it, but then you see there's nobody there. And the punchline was basically, they cheered for us, now we cheer for them. And they showed Austin and Mankind and The Undertaker. Like, it was powerful stuff. And I remember him saying that when he showed it to Vince McMahon, Vince had to leave the room because it made him so emotional. Like, he's very good at what he does. But he's gone from the promotion. He was the director for TNA broadcast for many years under previous ownerships. And like I said, for WWE before that. R.D. Evans, who was considered their head of creative, is also gone. The word making the rounds is that relations between he and the company had grown strained, and he was increasingly frustrated. It was said to be his decision to leave. And there were multiple departures from their live events division, but no talents were let go. There are people now trying to spin the timing as, oh, WWE may be about to buy TNA. But there's absolutely no indication of that happening. That's just people letting their imagination run wild. So if you see stuff like that, just consider the source. There's nothing to indicate that that's going to happen. I'll tell you what, they're doing this match, champion against champion, right? Roxanne against Jordynne Grace. Only Roxanne's title is on the line, at least for now. Only Roxy's title is on the line. I would have Jordynne Grace beat Roxanne Perez and win the NXT women's title. Why not? Make a splash. Shock the world. And then, at Against All Odds, which is, what is it, 2 weeks away? Grace has an open challenge, right? Roxanne accepts as a surprise and wins the belt back. She gets her to put the NXT women's title on the line and can win the belt back. Now, the only thing is, it's an open challenge, I believe, for the TNA Knockouts title. So do they go back and forth and have Roxanne win the Knockouts title? I don't know. So maybe it doesn't happen on that show, but she can get her belt back in a week or two. Like, it's a quick change, but it gets people talking. Now, it's completely antithetical to how WWE operates, to allow somebody else's champion to beat their champion on their show. But that's exactly why I would do it. She wins it back. No harm, no foul. Now, the only reason I think they might think twice about it is if their plan is to debut Julia next month. Julia is the wild card here. And all these reports about her debut in NXT indicate that the plan is for her to beat Roxanne on their Heatwave show in July. That's if Julia is ready by then. She just had surgery for a fractured wrist. She's walking around with a giant cast on her arm. But the plan supposedly is to have her beat Roxanne in her first night in to win the title. So they might not want to beat Roxanne. They might want to save that win for Julia. But fuck it. Like, I'd have Grace win. Realistically, Jordynne Grace should smash this woman into the ground anyway. I mean, just look at the two of them. It's not that hard to conceive of Roxanne losing to Jordynne Grace. But as long as she gets her win back, I don't see the harm in it. And I think it would get a lot of people talking. Now, the other headline coming out of NXT this week was the surprise debut of All Ego, Ethan Page. There had been a series of random attacks on talent behind the scenes. He was revealed to be the one behind it and attacked the NXT champion Trick Williams at the end of the show, held up the NXT title, teasing a match between the two. Despite what he said on his social media, I saw the video that he posted. Ethan Page was talking about how, contrary to popular belief, I haven't signed anywhere. He has signed with WWE. Of course he has signed with WWE. They do not shoot an angle like that with him laying out their champion unless he was under contract. Plus, he's already pulled out of some indie appearances that he was scheduled for later in the year. So they signed him. He left AEW and Ring of Honor. I guess you have to say Ring of Honor because that's where he was spending much of his time lately. But he left there at the beginning of May. And they very quietly removed his profile from their website. It was never said why he left. And I don't think he's spoken about it, not yet. One can surmise from the way that he was being used, or not being used, that he probably wasn't very happy there with how he was being utilized. And I'm sure he is not the only one. He is one of many, I'm sure, who feel that way. He was another victim of the start and stop push in AEW, where it would look like they were doing something with him, whether it was the Men of the Year stuff or whatever they had him doing, right? He would get this sort of small push doing something for a while. It wouldn't last long, though, and then he would vanish. I think I even made the comment when he left AEW that NXT would be a great place for him. Not even the main roster yet. Start him in NXT, kind of like a big fish in a small pond. Let him get a run there, and if all goes well, then he could always be called up. Because he's good, he is. He's a very good promo. He can definitely talk, which is going to help him a lot there. I think this is a great pickup for NXT. This is what NXT should be doing right now, coming up with surprises like this to get people talking. They've continued to utilize talent from the main roster, whether it's Natalya or Shayna Baszler or the Good Brothers, Ivar before he got hurt, Michin. Talent that has not been doing much on the main roster, using them in a way to help get over the talent they have down there. Michin, for example, she's one of 6 women in a ladder match at Battleground next weekend to crown the first ever NXT Women's North American Champion. And I like Fallon Henley in that match, by the way. And they've got Shayna Baszler taking on Lola Vice in an NXT Underground match, which I assume Vice is winning. Yeah, I know she already beat Natty in one of these matches before. I'm also curious about that Battleground show. I'm curious because I'm going to watch that show. I'm curious what the UFC Apex looks like for a wrestling show. I know it's a really small venue. I don't know if it's smaller than the PC. Like if the setup there will be able to accommodate more people. I think at the PC they have about 300 people, if that. I don't know if the Apex can fit more than that for a wrestling show. If it's bigger, it's not much bigger. And it's weird to me. I'm not even sure why they're doing it. They've been able to put a few thousand people on the road in actual arenas, so I don't know why they're running there unless they got a great deal to do so. But sometimes, these shows in a really intimate setting like this could turn out to be a lot of fun. So as a first time, I guess it's probably worth trying. I'm still waiting for one of these companies to run the Hammerstein Ballroom. I'm shocked that Tony Khan hasn't run there already for an AEW show.